Hi, I'm Shashank Bhargava, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show.
Hello. Good afternoon, sir. Myself Salma calling from the Axis Bank. क्या मेरी बात मिस्टर से हो रही है?
हेलो सर, मैं फोन पे कंपनी से बोल रही हूँ।
जी मैम बोलिए।
सर, आपका फोन पे पर 6,999 का कैशबैक आया है जो आपने अभी तक रिसीव नहीं किया है। सर, क्या आप ये कैशबैक लेना चाहते हो या फिर कैंसिल कर दिया जाए?
हर साल हमारी कंपनी है ना, ये जो जियो
जी
इसमें एक लकी ड्रॉ होता है।
अच्छा।
और उस लकी ड्रॉ के तहत जो मतलब नंबर निकलता है उन्हें एक फोन दिया जाता है। तो इस साल जो है वो आपका नंबर निकला है स्कीम में।
As many of you might have guessed, these calls that you just heard were not, of course, from Axis Bank, PhonePe, or Jio, but were professional attempts at scamming people. Every year, thousands of Indians end up falling prey to cyber crimes like these. In fact, there is a good chance that you might have gotten one of these calls yourself or know someone who became a victim of such scams.
सर, ये अगर सेंड करूंगा तो मेरे खाते में से 48,000 कट जाएगा ना सर?
ये फोन पे कस्टमर केयर है सर, प्लीज आप बैलेंस कटने के बात नहीं कर सकते हैं सर। ये वॉइस कॉल रिगार्डिंग कॉल होता है सर। एक्चुअली अगर इस तरह बोलेंगे सर तो हम लोग का प्रॉब्लम होता है सर।
अरे रोहित जी, आर्मी ऑफिसर हूँ, ऐसा काम थोड़ा ना करूंगा। और अगर कुछ काम कर रहा हूँ तो पिन और ओटीपी तो मांगता मैं आपसे। मैं तो आपको सिर्फ क्यूआर कोड स्कैन करने को बोल रहा हूँ।
अभी यहाँ पे ऑप्शन आ रहा है, सेंड का ऑप्शन आ रहा है मैम। आप तो 6,999 नीचे सेंड का ऑप्शन आ रहा है।
सेंड पे क्लिक कीजिए।
मैम ये मेरे अकाउंट में सेंड होगा ना?
जी
सेंड पे क्लिक कर दिया।
Calls like these and ones that are much more sophisticated have increased in the past few years. In fact, cyber crimes in general have been on the rise. Last year, the Mumbai police, for example, registered an 18% increase in cyber crimes. Now, there appears to be many reasons why this is happening. And one of them is that it is really hard for the police to track cyber criminals in India. Recently, Indian Express's Mohamed, Thaver and Jayprakash Naidu did a series investigating why this happens. In this episode, we talked to Mohamed about what they found out, how these criminals operate, why the police find it hard to catch them, and what needs to be done about it. Mohamed, before we talk about your series, could you first talk about exactly what constitutes a cybercrime? Like, how are we defining cybercrimes here?
So see, I mean, cybercrime in that sense has become a very open-ended term, because earlier when you spoke about cybercrime, it was generally mainly you put in your details on some website and then that is used to make fraudulent transactions. But now a lot of crimes happen where people just call you up and they claim to be from your credit card company, your mobile service provider, saying आपको KYC करना है, ये करना है, वो करना है. They'll take your details and then they'll make those fraudulent transactions. So in that sense, when we are talking cybercrime, in one sense, it is also about the usage of technology, in the sense that taking your account details, routing it through banks. So in that sense, it's a more open-ended term now, because now a lot of frauds are also happening on phone calls mainly.
So the use of technology and internet is definitely involved.
That's true. And you got to understand that cybercrime, it keeps evolving. So earlier, if you remember, the earliest cybercrimes, which now seems so obvious, is, when you would receive an email saying that I am the son of the deposed king of Nigeria or something, and I will need to transfer money to you. So give your account details. And, you would laugh about it. But now over a period of time, it has evolved so much. And like now it also includes making calls and all those things, that the definition also keeps changing along with time and along with changing modus operandi.
So what would you say is the most common type of cybercrime? Is it these calls that people make where they get people to reveal their OTP or KYC details, etc.?
So see, especially in Maharashtra or in Mumbai especially, what we have seen is that I would say that these calls that come form a major chunk of these cyber crimes. So a lot of people, and especially it, targets senior citizens, and it targets people who don't know to use technology that well. So, you will have someone calling up saying that आपकी इंश्योरेंस कंपनी से बोल रहा हूँ, आपको इतना पेमेंट करना पड़ेगा वरना your insurance policy will lapse. That poor senior citizen thinks that okay, this guy has my details, तो ये genuine ही होगा. Or somebody calls you from a mobile service provider saying कि आपका KYC नहीं हुआ है, आप अभी मुझे डिटेल्स दे दो वरना 12 घंटे में आपका अकाउंट. So you're scared, you're like, okay, just take it. So this constitutes a major chunk of the cybercrime that's happening. Even apart from that, there are like these matrimonial frauds where you meet people, there are these, they will create a profile of a guy who's a doctor in UK and, who's looking for this, and then he'll say that I'm going to come down to India, etc. So majoritarily, I would say it is these phone calls and in some cases this matrimonial fraud and so on and so forth in that sense.
And do we know how frequently these crimes occur?
So see, the problem in cases of cybercrime is that there is generally no record, because you will have a record only, for example, if the police has taken FIR in every case. For example, murder. If a murder happens, the police has to take an FIR. But in these cases, what also happens is that the police is very hesitant to take FIRs. So let's say, for example, in a day, if 15 people are losing money, just an example, maybe 3 or 4 of them at maximum would be able to get an FIR registered. And the cops are mainly hesitant because they know that in most cases, they do not have the ability, the inspiration to solve these cases, and it will show as an unsolved crime.
So when you say it will show as an unsolved crime, that's a problem for the police? They don't want that?
Absolutely, because see, what happens is like at your police station level, like a DCP will have a meeting of all police stations under him, and he will question a particular police station saying, why is the detection rate so low? And there they cannot say that it's cybercrime. So a detection rate is a yardstick by which, the performance of a police station or the senior inspector of the police station is measured. So in that sense, they want to avoid that embarrassment. So hence they will just say, aap application de do, they will just, stamp it and give it to you. But they'll be very hesitant, and hence you do not actually have a number, because some people who lose money, they'll realize that there's no point going to the police station. So there's no one place where the data is being collated. So that is a major issue with cybercrime.
And do we know, for example, how much money people end up losing because of these cybercrimes?
So see, it ranges. Like we have reported cases where people have lost even crores of rupees. There are 2 different types, right? One is where an individual is being attacked, and one is where a company is being attacked. Now, again, there are a lot of cyber attacks happening in private companies, but private companies know that the police do not have the wherewithal. So police officers off record tell us that, they don't even approach us because they'll go to some auditing firm or, some one of the big 4 or something like that, because they are advanced in that sense. So when it comes to these private companies, there have been crores of rupees that, like, for example, Cosmos Bank in Pune, there had been a bank transfer done fraudulently, which was around 98 crores. So, they are not only targeting individuals, they are also targeting large organizations. And in these cases, the amount involved is much more. Even in individual cases, we've had people losing 25 lakhs, 30 lakhs in individual cases, and some as low as even, like 20,000. So, the amount ranges depending upon the kind of victim, whether it's a person or an organization. Also depends on the amount of money you have in that particular account. So that kind of keeps varying as per, these permutations and combinations.
Right. And usually we have seen such criminals basically operate out of these hotspots, right? Like earlier, Jamtara in Jharkhand was a major hotspot. So could you talk about why such crimes take place out of such hotspots?
Yeah, so see, the hotspots make it much more viable. Basically, these hotspots are places where it becomes like small scale industry in that sense. So what also happens is that, like, for example, Jamtara, why did it become a hub? There are a number of factors. One is that that place was also under Naxal affected area. So off the record, people would say that they would pay money to the Naxals and Naxals would provide them protection. So if a police team even goes there, they would have to also nullify the threat of these people attacking them to even get to these fraudsters. Secondly, what also happens is that because the calls are made in such large numbers, these guys generally divide it amongst themselves. Like, for example, people say that Jamtara is now no longer the main hotspot. So now, for example, there are places like Mewat, there is this tri-junction between Rajasthan, UP and another state. So here what happens is that, like, since it's a tri-junction of 3 states, so let's say if the Rajasthan police comes to arrest them, they just move to UP. So they keep changing their location because all the 3 states are so easily accessible to them. So it becomes much more easy for them.
So in the case of Jamtara, for example, the place is slightly inaccessible. When the police come, they also have to deal with the Naxals. But in this new hotspot that you're talking about, the challenge is that the criminals shift from one state to the other.
Yeah, so see, this is one of the challenges. One is that they keep moving to ensure that police of one state doesn't go after them. That is one. Secondly, what also happens, like this is what cops in Mumbai have told us, that a lot of these places also kind of have their own arrangements with local strongmen, in cases even local police. They would dole out some payment every month. There is an agreement between them. So what policemen who've gone from Mumbai have told me is they've experienced is that sometimes when they contact the local police to take their help in arresting these people, and when they would reach the spot, these people are not there. And then they would realize that the local police has tipped them off. And without taking the help of the local police, it can get a bit difficult. And in a lot of these cases, they do that, they kind of have an agreement with, it could be the local police station, or it could be the local strongman, it could be the local politician, So they have those arrangements in place, those monetary, benefits that they give to ensure that in case if the police of any other place tries to kind of come near them, these guys will tip them off. So if you are working from one place alone, then it becomes much more easier.
Okay, so this is one challenge that the police face in trying to catch these criminals. The other one you mentioned is that they don't want to spoil their statistics. They don't want unsolved cases on their list. What are some of the other challenges that they face? Like, I'm guessing just the resources involved in chasing such criminals would be a big problem, right?
Yeah, so see, that's the most, I would say, interesting part. The reason that this has been happening at the pace that it has been is because these criminals have hit a sweet spot, and I'll tell you how. So initially what they did is whenever they would defraud someone, the amount involved would be, let's say, 40,000, 50,000, and they would never call up people in their own state. So if they're making a call from Jamtara, they would not call up Jharkhand, they would call up Bombay. When the Mumbai police find out that, okay, the fraud has happened from Jamtara and the amount lost, for example, is 50,000. Now, if they have to send a team to Jamtara, they know that they will face a lot of resistance. So they can't send like 2 people. They'll have to send a team of 6 people, 7 people. And so what they say is that they realize that to send a team of 7 people at a place for days together, aisa nahi hai ki they can directly go there and arrest someone and come. So, it will cost them 60, 70,000. So what they say is that, and it's weird, but they say that it does not kind of fit in the cost benefit analysis, where we are spending 60,000 to send a team to recover 40,000 lost by someone. So you understand how the economics works, and that's the reason these guys are so smart that they are kind of making calls to other states, that for individual cases the cops will think that it doesn't make sense to send a team of 7 people to pay more to recover less money, So that is a big challenge. In fact, that is one of the major challenges, because in some cases, we know of cases where complainants have told us that the cops have told us, listen, you then foot the bill of us going there. So there has to be a way out of this, because now that is what is happening. Unless the amount involved, like here in Bombay, they have 5 specialized cyber police stations. They only register complaints if the amount lost is higher than 10 lakhs.
And these police stations you mentioned, they're new, right? They've only recently opened?
Yeah. So these are new and they have a better detection rate, but they will only accept complaints which are about 10 lakh. Now, majority of the cases, it may not be 10 lakh, it will be 5 lakh, 4 lakh, 1 lakh. So these are the people who then go to the police station trying to get a complaint registered. The police is not registering. Then they go to the bank, because the normal police station is thinking, yeah, if this person has lost 80,000 and the money is gone, call has come from Noida, for example. He is thinking, yeah, there is no way we are going to send 8 people to Noida to get this and, pay more. So that kind of becomes an issue with these guys, So they say, ki, boss, how can we do this?
Right, and I wonder if criminals themselves sort of factor this in, that let's try to get 10,000 out of a bunch of people rather than getting 1 lakh from one person, because that is the kind of case that the police will actually go after.
I'll tell you what, because I've been reporting on cybercrime for a while. Initially, the amounts involved would be much less, and it did feel like it was being done deliberately. Generally, we would report it would be 20,000, 40,000, 60,000. However, now things have changed. Maybe they've got emboldened and maybe they feel, okay, you know what, even if we take more money, no one's going to come after us. So I think now it has changed, but initially, yes, I think that there was this thing where they're not going to take really big amounts. Like they're going to take 20,000 30,000, 40,000, 50,000, amounts that maybe somebody may think, okay, you know what, as it is, the police is not going to do anything, so let it go. But what the police was not realizing is that they're targeting a lot of people. So if you're going to take 50,000 from 1,000 people, then the amount involved is much bigger. So in that sense, initially we would see the amount, but now we are seeing a slight rise in the amounts that are being taken. So maybe now they've gotten much more emboldened, realizing that, okay, nobody is kind of really coming from other states to arrest us.
Okay, so that way catching these criminals does seem like a hard job for the police, considering, the limited resources and also just the way these criminals operate. But are there cases that are more likely to get solved? Like if people approach the police faster, for example, does that help?
Yeah, in fact, that is the only thing that is going to save you money. That's what they call the golden hour. So for example, if at 5 o'clock today you got a call and you ended up transferring money and you realize it was a fraudulent call, if within an hour's time you can contact the police or you can approach the bank, there's a better chance that they can kind of ensure that the money is not released. They can put a block on that, and people who've managed to recover money have done so in the first 1 hour or 2 hours. So in that sense, like cops keep saying, that it's so important that as soon as you realize that you've lost money, you approach them, because then that gives the bank the time to block that payment, So there have been cases where people have lost 4 lakhs and the bank was able to at least recover 2 lakh, 2.5 lakh. They could stop certain transactions. So that's what cops keep saying, that the most important thing for people who've lost money in that sense is to ensure that you report it as soon as possible. You report it to your bank, you report it to the police, basically before the end of the day, so that the money can be blocked. Because once they withdraw the money, then, cops will tell you that it's very difficult to kind of get it back.
So far in this episode, we have talked about the reasons why the police find it hard to catch cyber criminals and the way they operate. Next, we talk about how 2 constables found a way to cut through red tape and efficiently stop such cyber crimes. And we will also talk about the kind of toll such crimes take on the victims. But before that, a quick message.
Before we continue with the rest of the episode, we have a quick announcement to make. Rainbow Children's Hospital, along with the Indian Express, is bringing to you a podcast episode where host Anuradha Verma will be talking to Dr. Preetam Kumar Reddy, a pediatric specialist and intensivist, about missed vaccination schedules of children during the pandemic. You'll find the episode on Saturday morning on the 3 Things feed and wherever you get your podcasts from.
So Mohamed, so far we've been talking about the financial aspect of these crimes. But being a victim of a cyber crime must also take a psychological toll on people, right? Could you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, so a lot of cyber victims that we spoke to for the series we did, they recounted how harrowing it was for them. Like there was this woman who broke down multiple times while talking on the phone because she had taken a loan from her mother. The mother had saved the money for her medical treatment. She took the loan thinking she's going to pay it back, and around 20 lakhs was kind of taken by fraudsters. And she was feeling very guilty because, that was the money that she had to return to her mom. She could not use it for her own expenses. And, so she said that since then, both she and her husband have been having anxiety attacks, thinking of how are we going to get the money back. So that is one thing. Then there was this girl who was on matrimonial sites and she kept talking to this guy thinking he was a real guy. He was based in UK, etc. Eventually it turned out it was none of that and he was from Navi Mumbai or something, a cyber fraudster. So you also feel that you have chatted with this person, you have shared intimate details with a particular person for over a period of sometimes days, sometimes weeks, sometimes even months. And then to suddenly realize that this was all a con job. So there have been victims who went off matrimonial profiles saying they can no longer kind of have that trust. So people have to delay their marriages, have lost money that saved for their children's education. So in that sense, this is money that you've saved up over a period of time, and then to suddenly see it all go away. It impacts people in really serious ways.
And the other thing is that the victims of cyber crimes are also blamed a lot, right? Like people say, how could you be so foolish? And how could you give such details? And I wonder if that is something that people you spoke to shared?
Yeah, absolutely. So see, that is what happens. Like even when they go to the police station, sometimes like they call victim blaming. So they'll say, "Arey, how could you do this?" Sometimes bank will say that since you've done this, I mean, what can we do? Like if you were stupid enough to give this away. And I would like to point out that cybercrime in that sense, now cyber criminals have become evolved so drastically in that sense that they are really good at convincing you. Like they have your details, they have everything that you will need to be convinced that this person is calling from the company that she is saying. Especially now, earlier sometimes when you would hear what happened to the person, you would think, okay, maybe there were red flags. But now cyber criminals are very, very shrewd. They will have your details, they will have all the necessary things for you to believe. So in that sense, it is very unfair that when the victim, you are already harrowed, you lost your money, you go to the police station and then they're putting the blame on you. You go to the bank, they're putting the blame on you. At times your family members are putting the blame on you, saying, how could you do that? And which is very unfair because these guys, I have heard some calls and these guys are very, very shrewd. Like it's very difficult for you to say that, okay, no, this is a fraud, because these guys keep evolving. That's their thing. They keep evolving. They keep plugging loopholes. So, it's very difficult to call them out in that sense.
Yeah, and even if the police are not blaming you, there are situations like you mentioned when the police themselves are asking you money to go and find the criminals.
So that's what I mean. It's harassment. Most cyber victims that I spoke to, that's what they said. Like one, they lost money, faced harassment. And the second phase of harassment comes when you try to go to the police station, when you try to go to the bank, nobody is helping, no people are blaming you. So people said that it is such a demoralizing experience that you lost money and you don't know where to go. The police is saying you come back tomorrow, you come day after tomorrow. It's a very harrowing experience. And in majority of the cases, that's what cybercrime victims go through, like unless it's about 10 lakh or something like that. And that is generally the experience of cybercrime victims.
Okay, so we have talked about the challenges that the police face in trying to catch these criminals. And in your piece, you have written that most initiatives have not worked. But there are few that have. And in that regard, you mentioned the example of this initiative by these two constables from Gwalior. And basically, this initiative involved a WhatsApp group. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so see, that was such an interesting initiative that actually helped people save a lot of money. So basically what had happened is once they got a complaint about somebody having lost money and they wanted to forward it to Paytm, but there was an electricity outage and they could not send it on mail or something. There was some issue they were facing from their computer. So they decided, okay, you know what, can we WhatsApp it to that person? And the Paytm guy said, yes, you can. And that's when they realized that, okay, you know what, this is much more quicker. So what these two constables did based in Gwalior, what they did is that they created a WhatsApp group, and on that group, they added all service providers. So generally, for example, if they would have to contact PhonePe, Paytm, major bank nodal officers of Vodafone, or whatever they saw was frequently being used. And then, so once they had these people on the group, what would happen is if anybody lost money somewhere, so the cops were told that such a group exists and they would also add cops on that. So what they would do is they knew that the priority was saving money. So what they would do is they had a format where they would write that this person has lost so much money. The money has been transferred to this bank account. We need to act urgently. And they would put it on the WhatsApp group and let's say tag the Paytm nodal guy saying, see, this has happened 2 hours back. Can we stop it? So he will then quickly ensure that the money is stopped. The other proceedings then they will do later on and they will send a written questionnaire and etc. But the act of saving money happens instantly.
Right, you don't have to wait for someone to come to work, log in and check their email basically.
Absolutely. And also they have the right people, because here you will write an email, then he'll say, okay, you know what, I'm not the person, this is the person. So they got all the nodals and all the people who were responsible for liaising with the police. So, you did not waste time figuring out who the right person is, who is authorized, kisko ye karna hai. You have him there and he does it. So that worked so well that, then they started having cops from other states on that. Then there were so many people that they had to create a Telegram group. At the end of the day, a victim, more than getting the cyber criminal arrested, is interested in getting his money back. So he'll be like, I don't care about those people being arrested. Tum mera paisa bacha do and that's all I need. So they are like, all the procedure, the red tape can happen later, but let's focus on saving the money. And that kind of has worked very well.
And because cyber criminals are taking advantage of technology in the most swift way possible, and then to catch them, you can't have people, sitting and working on old desktops and a system that just has a lot of red tapeism.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that's what I mean. See, it's more about practicality as compared to a conventional crime. Cybercrime is something that obviously has no boundaries. So initially the approach was the traditional one where you send an email, I send an email, but that is not like your response has to work at the pace at which the fraudster is working, or maybe even faster. So you need initiatives like this, because in such cases time is of the essence, and and if you can have all the right people at one platform, I mean, that is half the battle won.
And Mohamed, in your piece you also mentioned that a national helpline was also set up for the purpose of catching cyber criminals. Did that helpline help at all?
Right. So, I mean, see, the helpline was you're supposed to call up and give them details about the amount you've lost, etc., give them other details, and they were supposed to help. But what we have seen in Maharashtra is that, it has not, like, the helpline here was working some specific hours. It was not even a 24/7 helpline. So if you lost money at night, you call them, nobody's going to answer. So, I mean, I'm not sure about other states, but in Maharashtra, I would suggest, like, the idea seems to be fine, but the execution, I don't think is up to the mark, So I don't see that really helping out in case of Maharashtra.
Yeah, and you mentioned that, they couldn't even find enough people to work at the helpline.
Yeah. So that's what I mean. Maharashtra Cyber, I mean, we spoke to them and they also said that, we do not have enough people to even man the helpline and things like that. So that's the thing. You will have an idea like a national helpline, etc. But it all boils down to whether you are able to execute it or not execute it, So in that sense, yeah, I mean, it will really depend upon the people at the police station and to see whether this can be kind of done well or no.
Right. And you spoke to experts about this problem. What kind of changes do they propose for the prevention of cybercrime and so that these criminals actually get caught?
Yeah, so the experts we spoke to, one of the first things they said is like cybercrime is a crime without boundaries. Like Maharashtra police has its own boundaries. So what majority of them suggested is that you need to kind of look at it federally, because every time if a fraudster from Mewat has kind of defrauded people in Bombay, like you can't keep sending people there, otherwise you'll have to keep a team stationed there only. So there has to be a federal agency. So for example, if you have like outposts at 6 places across the country, like that in Mewat there is a lot of cybercrime happening, you have an outpost there. So as soon as someone loses money here, that team goes there, it doesn't have to travel. So you have to look at it federally, like you have the CBI, like you have the NIA. So you will need an agency that has branches across the state so that, you're not sending people from here. If an agency is nearby, they can keep raiding these places. It makes a difference. Otherwise, a team from Mumbai police will go conduct a raid, come back, then again they'll start. You can't keep traveling as much in a country as vast as ours. So the main thing was to kind of have a federal agency that can look into it.
Do you think the problem also lies in how we view such crimes? Like the NIA and CBI, they deal in acts of terror or murders and high-profile cases that get national limelight. So going after those cases, in that way makes sense. Cyber crimes often don't get that limelight, and, we often end up blaming individuals themselves. So maybe that's why we don't have a political will to create a federal agency for it.
Right, and I strongly believe that people still don't realize how much money and how many people are being impacted by cybercrime. It is not a part of a conversation. Like yesterday, a cybercrime officer was telling me, like the Maharashtra budget was presented yesterday, and he said cybercrime is not even a heading. And another thing that I have seen is that some cyber officials, they tend to think in, in large terms. They will talk of cyber terrorism, they'll talk of the big things. But nobody wants, like, this is something that is these calls that happen because the amount involved is small, but people, like, they'll talk about cyber terrorism, they'll talk about these big things and hack attacks and all, but nobody really kind of realizes the scale of this problem. So it's not a part of the conversation. So I mean, till the time it gets that kind of an attention in the media, amongst the police tell their political bosses that, boss, we need this, they realize it's important. So it's kind of got a long way to go in that sense for it to become a part of the conversation.
You were listening to 3 Things by The Indian Express. Today's show was written and produced by me, Shashank Bhargava, and was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcast@indianexpress.com.